The Price of Healthy Gums is Eternal Vigilance is the 6th episode of the 2nd season of 2.5 Men, and there will be spoilers as I discuss what happens in this episode and talk about things that I found particularly interesting. But honestly, while I enjoyed the episode, there's not that much that really stood out to me as being particularly funny or particularly well done. We only have one main part of the narrative, but it's enough to sustain itself for the entire episode. The narrative does develop really well, but when I look at my notes, I've basically written down just the structure of the episode. There's not much that stood out to me as being particularly funny. So it's not necessarily a bad episode. I did enjoy it, but it's definitely not a personal favourite. And it actually starts off quite differently because we're actually at a restaurant. Usually we're at Charlie's house. So it's nice to have a slightly different opening, and we have Charlie, Alan, Evelyn and Jake, and we do have this brilliant exchange between Evelyn and Jake that I think is probably one of the funniest things in the episode, actually, where she initially calls him dear, and then he says he wants venison from the menu, and she points out that it's deer, but he still thinks she's calling him dear, and they go back and forth a little bit, and I found it to be very well done and very brief, but certainly a strong way to start the episode. And then the main point of the episode is established very quickly, still in that opening scene, where it's revealed that as a boy, Alan shoplifted some silly putty. But it's very obvious, based on Charlie's reaction and the way he's hiding behind the menu, that he was responsible. Then, a little later on, Alan is discussing this with Charlie, and it seems like Alan is about to tell Charlie he knew it was him, and we have this beautifully shot moment where Charlie is in the foreground, Alan is in the background, and it's like Alan is about to say, I know you did it. But he didn't. He said that he thought that maybe he did shoplift the silly putty, but he was so traumatized by this horrible thing that he'd done that his mind had blocked it out. And that he just couldn't remember doing it, but that he did actually do it. I think that was a strong element of surprise there. I don't think anybody could have guessed that that's what Alan was going to say. And then he starts to go on about how, over the years, because of this, he's had to keep bad Alan in check. And in a bit of really interesting character development for this particular episode, at least, or in hindsight, the character development of Alan has happened over the years. Because of this incident, he has grown to become the Alan he is today because he's had to keep himself tightly wound to keep bad Alan in check. And I thought that was really fascinating, and it's a nice way for them to say, well, actually, maybe Alan is the way he is because once upon a time, Charlie planted some silly putty on him. And I just thought that was really fascinating and definitely very thought-provoking. And then Charlie confesses to Rose what he did, and then ultimately confesses to Alan. And we get this great scene in the bathroom where Alan's doing his teeth, and there's a lot of counting going on, and I thought it was definitely a great moment, I think. Again, not necessarily very funny, but still something that I enjoyed. And Alan obviously is furious with Charlie for having done this, and then we have an exchange between Charlie and Evelyn, and then nothing is really resolved there, and then they're having dinner, and Alan is not talking to Charlie. We have some great lines from Jake, nothing that I wrote down as being specifically funny, but again, definitely not too bad. And then Evelyn comes over and saves the day. And I think she knew what she was doing when she told Alan that since he's not getting along well with Charlie, Alan and Jake can come and stay with her. And we have a couple of seconds just focusing on Alan, where Alan is clearly trying to weigh up the situation and realises that the right thing to do is to just make amends with Charlie because that's significantly better than living with his mother. And I thought that was a nice way to conclude things and to wrap things up in a very believable way. And then we get the final scene where Alan and Charlie are perhaps about to have a heart-to-heart. Alan says, it feels really good to get all of that out in the open. What else did you mean when you said that's not the worst thing you did? And Charlie confesses that he peed on Alan's bed to make him think he was still wetting the bed. And it's a very disgusting way to end the episode, but it worked very well to wrap things up. It's not a bad episode. There's nothing wrong with it. I can't fault it. There are some really great moments. It's nice to get a little bit of insight into Alan's character and, of course, his relationship growing up with Charlie. It's not the funniest. I don't think I laughed out loud. I think maybe I kind of laughed out loud at the whole deer exchange, but it wasn't a proper laugh out loud moment. So a good episode, absolutely. Nothing about it that I would suggest could have been done differently. It's not the funniest, but I still enjoyed it. The price of healthy gums is eternal vigilance is certainly not too bad.